Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I recently did a video on 5 baits that I want to work into my rotation in 2023. These were baits that either I used to use and for whatever reason kind of stopped using them, or they're new trends that I really think are working well. And therefore, they were 5 baits that I wanted to start fishing more in 2023. And the video was really well received. But I did get one comment that made me think, and I thought it was a really good comment. And that was simply a question they posed to me. It was, Matt, if these are 5 baits you're going to throw more of, what are 5 baits you're going to throw less of? Because if you're throwing these, you can't be throwing something else. And I thought that was a really good question. So I've got the answer for that. I've got 5 baits here that I'm not going to throw as much. These are baits that just for whatever reason are falling out of my rotation because they're becoming either less productive for me, or I've got other baits that I feel like work better and are more productive than these baits. So we're going to break into that. I'll give you some good background on each of those baits. And I just want to point out, I do have Hank in the room right now. He's building some skirts for me. If you watch the Clark's Hill recap, let me see that jig. Toss it over. This was a jig that he put together for me to take to Clark's Hill, and I caught a pile of fish and did really well. But you can see it's all beaten up. So I'm having him build me a bunch more of these skirts so that I have them for upcoming tournaments because they were that productive. And as you guys can see, it's a mess in here right now. And this is no longer just a one-man team. Now we've got the boys working to help me further my fishing career. Anyways, all right, so let's get into these baits that are kind of falling out of my rotation. The first one, guys, we're going to talk about this guy right here. This is a frog, hollow belly frog. For whatever reason, I do not generate nearly as many bites on a frog as I used to. I do think the fish are kind of getting accustomed to it. I think a lot of people are throwing a frog all over the place, and therefore I just don't throw it nearly as much. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't generate big bites. I'm not going to say I'm not going to throw it at all. But a frog for me has gone from being a pattern I'll run for a good portion of the day to really being now just a very situational bait. I might make, instead of fishing with it for hours, I might make 10 casts now throughout the day with it. Unless I'm at a true frog fishery where, that's just one of the main patterns that are going. But there was a point where I felt like you could go to almost any lake in the country, throw a frog, and generate a lot of strikes. And I don't feel like that's the case anymore. I'm finding that it's just not generating as many strikes for me. And therefore, I'm really not throwing it nearly as much. So this is one of the baits that I'm putting down more so than a lot of the other baits. Now, I know there's probably a lot of people out there that are going to say, Matt, you're crazy. Frog's a great bait. It is a very good bait, and it's one of the most fun baits to fish. But it's becoming less and less of a tournament bait for me because I'm not generating nearly as many strikes as I used to. So that's the first bait. The next one is a football head jig. In this case, the football head jig is becoming something I'm not throwing as much because I'm finding other baits that are kind of satisfying the same football head role, but I find to be generating more bites and are faster to fish, allow me to cover more water. Like a wobble head is a great example of it. I throw a lot of wobble heads now because they're kind of the same thing as a football head jig, but they just seem to generate more strikes. I can still determine what the bottom is like with that, and I can cover more water faster. So I'm tending to throw less football head jigs than I used to. I used to be a very popular bait for me. Now it's become more of a bait that I throw if I'm at a specific ledge fishery or I've got, a big offshore bite going on. It may be a bait that's in the rotation, but I used to almost always have one tied on. And now it's become a bait I don't have tied on for a good portion of the year. Doesn't mean it doesn't catch fish. It just means for me, I feel like I'm more productive with a wobble head or even a crankbait. Crankbait's something I'm trying to throw more of. That's one of the patterns that I'm trying to build on for 2023. And therefore, if I'm throwing the crankbait, the football head jig's not being thrown nearly as much. The third bait is a specific one. This is the Shimano World Minnow with flash boost technology jerkbait. Guys, I got to tell you, I threw this a lot in 2022. I think this idea of that, you know, flashness going on in the middle when it moves is awesome. But I got to tell you, I have had very little success on this bait. So for me, I'm going to stop even trying in 2023, and I'm going to stick with the jerk baits that I have 100% confidence in. We're talking the Berkeley Stunna is one of my absolute favorites. The Megabass Vision 110s are fantastic. Those are really the two main ones that I throw. But I've tried this a pile and I've had very little success. And I know there's a lot of you guys out there that think that this thing is just the cream of the crop. I don't feel that way. I really don't. I don't think it runs great. I don't think it darts great. I think it really goes into, you know, that flash boost technology. It, to me, this is me being sold on something that looks cool, and I'm not sold that the fish are eating this better than other jerk baits because of it. Now, I'm sure in the comment section you guys can disagree with me. We are all able to disagree, but for me, I'm putting it down. I'm not even going to try this year anymore because I was that disappointed with that bait in 2022, and I really threw it a good amount with very, very little success at all. The next thing I'm going to put down more of, and this is just, again, I feel like there's better things out there, and that's the chunk trailer. So this is the Berkeley Meaty Chunk. You know, it's just a standard chunk trailer. I got to tell you, this was like my go-to jig trailer for years, but at this point, chunks have become more of something that I've just got resting on the wall over here because I find that I have better success with other trailers. I really like the Berkeley Pit Boss, the Powerbait 3-inch Pit Boss as a jig trailer. That's something that is becoming much more of a go-to for me on all of my jigs. And it just is something where the chunk is becoming much more situational. Now, I will say, if I'm fishing a shad spawn or I'm doing the Alabama shake with a swim jig, at that point, a chunk is a good option because of the profile of it and allows you to keep your bait higher up in the water. But this has really just become a situational trailer for me versus what used to be a trailer I used on all my jigs. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of you out there are like, a chunk is the best trailer. It catches fish, but I, of late, have just had a lot more confidence in putting a Pit Boss on the back of my jigs. So the chunks are really just resting on the wall over here. The last one I'm going to talk about too is another one that is an absolute fish catcher. And that just happens to be the old Shaky Head trick worm. You know, this is a Zoom trick worm. It's a great bait and I've caught hundreds, thousands of fish on it. But for me, the Shaky Head is a bait that I just am not throwing nearly as much. I mean, this is a phenomenal worm. It's a great Shaky Head worm. And it's really not necessarily about the worm. It has more to do with the Shaky Head, the technique. I'm not throwing a Shaky Head nearly as much as I once did because I like the Ned rig more. I think that generates just as many bites. I think it's just a better bait than a Shaky Head in most instances. I'm also throwing, you know, more drop shots. I'm throwing more of the hover rig. So when I'm throwing a lot of finesse stuff already, some of the finesse stuff's not going to get used, and a Shaky Head is one that I'm tending to really move away from. Again, it catches fish, but for me, it's probably going to be the last man out or the first man out in terms of if I got to put one down because I'm throwing different finesse, that's going to be one of the first finesse baits that I put down because I have other finesse baits that I prefer at the moment. So these are 5 baits that, you know, for the most part, they're productive baits and a lot of people love them. But for me, I'm putting them on the sidelines. You know, I've got different starters that I want to put into my starting lineup. And from that standpoint, some of these baits are going to be put back on the bench. And these are the ones. Let me know in the comment section, what are some of the ones that you guys are starting to not use nearly as much so that we can see from you guys and have some good discussion in the comment section. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.